All right, how we doing? Good? Good, man. My name is Chris. If you are brand new, I'm so pumped that you are here. And so tonight, if you haven't caught on to this yet, it is Parents' Night at Fuel, okay? And so what that means, in case you still don't know, it means that your parents are in the room with us, and Megan made me dress up like Mr. Rogers, okay? And so it's just kind of messed up night, but no, we're really, really happy that you guys are here. And so if you're brand new, or for the parents, because you guys don't know what we do every single week, we teach inside these things called series, right, where we talk about a concept or an idea for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. And so what's happening today is we're in the middle, kind of winding down a series called Stairway to Heaven. And what this series is all about is that there are certain things we can do that connect us to God. They're steps, they're faith steps that we can do that can connect us in our relationship with God. And so where have we been? Right, we're in week 4, and so let's kind of do a little bit of recap. Where week 1, we talked about the fact that the Bible, right, is something that connects us to God. And how many of you guys remember that day where we played Fruit Ninja on stage, and it was incredible, and we were, and it was a good time. Probably the best sermon illustration I've ever had in my life. Second week, we started talking about sharing your story, right, and the fact that when your life collides with Jesus, you have a story to tell. Right? And then last week, Josh came and spoke, and didn't Josh do a great job? Man, wasn't that fun? Josh nailed it where he talked about powering up through prayer and the fact that when you pray, man, it connects you to God. And so today, we're going to talk in our 4th step in the 4th week about this thing called worship. Okay, now, here's what I need everyone to do. When you think about worship, we all think of something, right? Can't we agree? We all think, when we hear the word worship and it connects us to God, what's the one thing we all think of? Yes, music and singing, right? We all think in those terms. And here's what happens. We show up to church, and for me, time out for a minute. You guys don't know how good you have it. My gosh, isn't the band awesome here? We need to give it up for them. They're incredible. Dude, Noah's over here shredding it. I'm like, dang, man. He's incredible. And so here's what's happening. Is for me, when I was your guys' age, when I was in church growing up, look, our music was terrible. Jeez, like it was somewhere caught between Hillbilly Nation and organs, okay? And it was just like, I mean, I was like, man, if that's heaven, I don't want to go, And so for me, it was so confusing because we show up and music, or this thing called worship, is something we'll show up to, and we just think, that's just what you do in church. And maybe you're confused why we do that, right? Or maybe you're brand new here, and what we do during the music confuses you. Let's be honest. Maybe you're brand new to this thing, and you're like, why when we start singing music? You see you see the hand go up, and you're like, does everyone have questions? Is that you know what I mean? Like, why when you go to school, you do this, it means question. You come to church, you do this, and we're like, what? No one answers, and you just want to know, what's the question, right? Maybe you were one of the lucky ones. You sat next to the really, really excited worshiper, right? Where for you, it was almost like they were landing a plane. They started singing, and both their hands went up, and it was like, shoo, and you're just trying to not get hit. Maybe you did get hit, and you got a nosebleed. We're sorry about that. Or maybe you were with the person that just can't sing. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, I'll stand with us. It's always a girl. I'm sorry, ladies, but it's always a girl that they're just like, I'll stand. And you're like, wow, I hope I'm not next to you in heaven again, right? And so for us, we got to wrap our minds around, what is worship, right? And here's what I want you to understand. Worship is not just singing. What we want you to realize is when you come to Fuel, worship is what we do. It's not just when the music starts. It's what happens when you come to Fuel. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to dive into 2 questions today, and we're going to ask, what is worship and why do we worship? And so number 1, very first thing is, if you want to answer the question, well, if worship is not just music, then what is it, right? Like what is worship? And so I want to give you a definition, the best definition I know of, so you want to know of what is worship, if you want to know, it's an automatic response to what's already been done. Number one, worship is an automatic response to what has already been done. Now, when you think of automatic responses, think about it. There are some things in life that when you see them or when you hear them, they just cause a reaction, right? Right? You know what I'm talking about? And so now, we're not going to worship in this second, but I just want you to see I want you to see a video that it will cause a reaction, okay? Does that make sense? And so, here's a disclaimer for the parents, because none of the kids will care, but the parents, now if you got a weak stomach, you look down. I don't know. This is fuel, okay? And so for us, but I just want you to see, because I just want you to listen and to watch what happens when we watch this video. Play it. Oh.
Ooh, that sucks.
Okay. now, before we get in trouble, do not go home and jump off of things bigger than you, okay? Okay, number one, there's a reason we showed you parkour does not mean you're hardcore, it means you're stupid, okay? We get that, okay. But here's what I want you to know. What happened every single time someone hurt themselves? All of us, even your mom and dad, something happened, right? Like we all went, oh, right? I mean, the mom in here couldn't take it. She just looked down. You know? But for us, and that's what I want you to realize, is worship, okay, bring it into worship, is an automatic response like that, except you're not just going, oh, because someone got hurt. But look, you are reacting. It's an automatic response to what Jesus has already done for us. Where one verse, I think, points out exactly what worship is. And it's found in Romans chapter 12, verse 1. It says, therefore, I urge you. So this is one of the greatest pastors ever known. His name is Paul, and he's urging us to understand something. He's going, I want you to get this. Because I urge you, brothers and sisters, and then look at this. In view of God's mercy, those are huge words. In view of God's mercy. So you're supposed to look at the mercy of God, and look what happens. After you see in view of God's mercy, I urge you to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. Look at this. This is your true and proper, everyone say the last word with me. Worship. Right, now time out. Because what's Paul teaching us? He's teaching us that what worship is it's an automatic response to God's mercy. Now call time out and just unpack what God's mercy is. Think about this. What's God's mercy means? God's mercy really is understanding you're really not that good of a person, right? And that's why I love middle school, because this is the age you start to realize, you know what? I got some things wrong, right? Like there are moments, your parents are in the room. Let's be honest. There are moments you wake up and you decide, I'm not listening. Maybe you wake up, you got respect problems to your parents. Maybe you go to school and you're just mean to people. Maybe you just don't respect your parents. You don't respect your teachers. Maybe there are thoughts and things that are going on and rumbling inside of you where you start to realize, you know what? I'm not that good, but here's what mercy is, and don't miss this. Mercy is God. Don't miss that. God looking at all of your sin, all of your disrespectfulness, all of the things that you struggle with where you don't want to be that way, but you seem to be drawn these directions. God looks at you, and look, God doesn't say, I'm done with you. God doesn't say, I'm pushing you away. God's mercy, His mercy sees us as sinners, sees our mess, and says, you know what? I still love you. I'm still going to die for you, and I'm still sending my son to pay for every mistake and everything you've done. That's what the mercy of God is, and Paul urges us that message, the gospel, Jesus loving you, God loving you in your sin, meaning that you don't do anything to deserve it, that has to cause a reaction in us. Think about that. That means you can't hear that message and sit there. Because worship is a response. Worship is what we do at Fuel. Worship is listening to that message, understanding God's mercy, and it ripping through you where you get pumped up. Seriously, like think about this. Automatic responses, right? What if we were like, look, the storms were so bad today. Look, did you hear the news? Like Davis Middle School. Who's in here? Davis, you raise your hand. What if they were like, you know what? We don't have school. You would all go, woo, right? We would be pumped. What if we were just like, you know what? No one goes to school because school is boring. We would all be like, woo, right? Okay. You would all be poor and broke the rest of your life and not know how to read. So we go to school. But think about that. Here's the deal. It's a response. Our hearts get a little more excited, right? Think about this. I was at a football game the other day. And if you couldn't tell by now, I'm a little bit crazy, right? I don't know a better word for that, right? Like I am like a firecracker. And so I go to a football game, and I love the Lions. They're struggling right now. We pray for them. I believe you should. So, but they're not doing real good. But I went to the football game last year when they played the Buccaneers. And look, I show up, and there's something in me. When I go to the football game, I just want to go crazy. Like, I just want to, okay? But I went with my buddies and his dad, and they're, like, very, very reserved. They're like bros, you know, where they're just quiet and, like, they just grunt at each other, like, you know, and so I'm trying to fit in with them. I'm like, I don't want to embarrass my buddies, you know? But here's what happened. All of a sudden, Pettigrew of all people. I don't even know, but we don't really like him if you're a Lion fan. So, yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, he catches a pass, and I was in the third row, right on the goal line. Stafford, Pettigrew, boom, 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 because he's not very good. He almost missed it, right? But then he catches it, and what happened? In that moment, touchdown, arms go up. I'm sitting there trying not to embarrass my friend. We're grunting at each other. Touchdown. I lost my dang mind. I was like, woo! And they were like, woo! We were like, chest bump. Boom, you know? Awesome. We all lost ourselves. Now here's what's crazy. What are we doing in that moment? We're worshiping. Don't miss that. Because worship is a response to what has been done. And here's what's mind-blowing. We can get excited about leveling up in Call of Duty, but we get bored at church. We get pumped about Lions, but we get bored in church. Do you realize the message we have? We have the gospel. We have Jesus, that his mercy is inside of us, and that he loved us. Even though we didn't deserve it, he loved us, and that's got to do something to us. Man, we got to cheer. We got to do that. And that's why for us, our philosophy is at Fuel. We should have a good time. In fact, you want to know why we do what we do? Because we believe the news of Jesus is so good, it should pump us up. Think about this. Want to know why? Anyone ever wonder why we sing and play so loud? Number one, because there's the girl that sings really loud and really terrible, so we want to drown her out. Number one. Okay, we're just kidding, I know. But it's because, look, we're worshiping. And we want there to be lights and fog and this thing to be blasting because, look, Jesus is worth it. It's the only reasonable response to the gospel. Why do we preach? Why am I yelling and spitting and screaming? You ever wonder that? Like some of you guys are like, you know, every week, it's like spit and veins, you know. And I'm sorry about that. Why? Because if you believe in Jesus and believe that he actually does love you, I can't help but to scream. I can't help but to yell about it. And I want you guys to get excited about that. And I want us to clap. I want us to get excited. Like, we've got to understand that that is worship. And it's why we do everything we do is worship here at Fuel. And then the question is why do we do that stuff? It's because of this, and don't miss this, because it stirs our affections for God. You know what I'm talking about? It's like it makes us happy. Like, for example, have you ever had a relationship where you just were happy that it was there? You know what I'm talking about? If your mom's in the room, you need to look at her and be like, Mama, I'm so glad you're in my life. Okay, that's an affection, okay? But here's what's crazy, is sometimes relationships, you can become so used to them that you kind of lose their flavor. Does that make sense? They kind of get lost. Like for me, I bought a puppy when me and my wife first got married. And what happens with puppies? They're just all cute and cuddly and this big. And here's what I remember. I bought the little puppy. The puppy, and I was like, cute little pet. I just want to poke it and just nuzzling. I'd take it to bed with me. I would cuddle with the puppy. And then it got big, and I was like, it's a dog now. And look, it's just a pooping, peeing, eating machine. And I'm like, I don't pet my dog no more. I don't even want my dog. You want a dog? You have my dog. But what happened? And you go, whoa. How did I go from pretty little pet to boom, get out of my life? Because here's what's crazy. We have this tendency, stay with me, we have this tendency where we lose affections. We lose them. And what worship does is it draws us back to being happy about Jesus. We're understanding, the Bible teaches us to be careful that we don't lose our affections towards God. Well, check this out. In the second book of the Bible, anyone know what it is? Exodus, booyah, right there. And so it goes Genesis, Exodus. Exodus, there's this guy named Moses. How many of you guys heard of Moses? Moses, man, we call him Big Mo. Yell, Big Mo! One more time, Big Mo! All right, Big Mo, he was rolling deep. Jesus was like, I'm going to use you in huge ways, Big Mo. And Big Mo was like, all right, I don't believe you. And then all of a sudden, he saw a burning what? He saw a burning bush. Think about that. He's walking through, all of a sudden, bam, bush. That's incredible. Then he goes to Pharaoh, says, let my people go. He does the 10 plagues. How many guys have heard of those before? Essentially what happened, it all started where he started saying, let my people go because they were slaves. And the king at the time was like, no. And they're like, okay, well, guess what? All your water is going to turn to blood. And it all did. Imagine that. You go home, you flush the toilet. It fills up with blood. All of a sudden, there's locusts everywhere, eating everything. Could you imagine waking up and just being covered in locusts? Oh! Frogs, it talks about frogs being everywhere. And then Pharaoh, the king, is like, you know what? Take your people, you're crazy. And Big Mo's like, straight up dog. And so he takes his people, they start leaving, and then what happens? Pharaoh's like, oh, no, you didn't. And he goes after them, and then what happens? There's a sea in front of them. And so the people start freaking out. They're like, Pharaoh, they're coming to kill us. Or Big Mo, they're coming to kill us, and we got a problem. It's called the water. And Moses is like, it's all right. You know my name? Say my name, Big Mo. Say my name, Big Mo. Say my name, Big Mo. And he just blasted the water, and it was just like, and it just, the Bible, the Red Sea parts. And they just rolling through the deep right there, just whoosh right through, okay? Think about that. How many, just be honest, if you were there and saw the Detroit River just part, and we just went, we're going to Canada, walked through. How many of you would ever forget that? No one. No, like, I don't know. Like, no one would do that. But here's what's crazy. is the Bible teaches us to be careful we don't forget the good things God's given us. We look at this. Just read this verse in Deuteronomy 4, verse 9. God says, be careful. Don't miss this. Watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen. Time out. Again, what had their eyes seen? Their eyes saw the parting of the Red Sea. Their eyes saw the wonders of God. Their eyes saw unbelievable things. And there's this thing that says, you know what? You've got to make sure that you don't forget those things or let them fade from your heart as long as you will live. And then it says this, teach them to your children and their children after them. Why would there have to be such a reminder? Because in our hearts, there's a tendency to come to Fuel and hear about the goodness of Jesus, go back to school on Tuesday and be a bully again. We have a tendency to hear about Jesus at Fuel and get really, really excited about Jesus at Fuel and forget about him and start doing things with our friends in the gym locker room that we know we shouldn't be doing. We have a tendency to think and love Jesus in this moment, but then go home and mouth off to our parents. Look, we've got to understand, worship brings us back and gets us to remember the goodness of God. Worship brings us back to see God's mercy and to set our hearts right. Worship brings us back and connects us to God. It's a faith step. It's a stairway to heaven. And that's why right now, like if you're here and you just don't feel close to God, here's what my best suggestion for you. You ever have them days where you're just going, man, I don't know if God loves me? You ever have them days where you're going, man, I've just messed up. I don't know. My best advice I can do and tell you is to worship. Is to worship. And understand, worship's not just singing. That's part of it. But worship is reading God's word is part of it. Worship is maybe serving in the church. And yes, worship is singing. That means, look, if you want to connect to God, best thing I can tell you to do is worship. That means one time, just do this. See what happens. You want to be happy about Jesus again? Lock yourself in your room, flip on your iPod, and start listening to worship music. Lock your door and start singing it. Something will start to happen in your heart, I promise. Maybe you push back and you're like, well, I don't like music. Look, maybe you need to get a podcast and listen to a great preacher. Here's what I know. You'll hear the word of God spoken and your heart will start to stir. Maybe you don't want to do any of them things. Here's a great thing. Go serve at the new building. Just go build it. Maybe come on Sunday or Saturday and go help in Metro Kids. And this is what I know, is those things are worship. And here's what happens. It starts to excite you about God again. It starts to excite you about Jesus again. Because you get to see his mercy. You get to start seeing everything and his goodness to you. And here's what I know is that there's an automatic reaction that starts to happen in your heart. There's an automatic response that starts to move in you, where you start to see God's goodness, and you get to start worshiping, and you start reacting, and you start thanking him for saving, you start thanking him for sending Jesus, you start thanking those things. Because worship stirs your heart, and listen to me, at Fuel, in this place, what we want for you is to stir your affections for Jesus. What we want every single time we meet is to worship. And look, that means we can't just sit there. But we've got to respond to the goodness of Jesus. And so here's what's going to happen. We're going to end with some singing. Now, this is a form of worship, right? Singing is worship. And so here's what I want. I just want us to start booming the new song Dance that they started to play today. Because here's what's going to happen is when the band starts kicking in, right? What starts to move in our hearts, right? You start to feel the things of God. You start to move. You start to shift. You start to get a little bit excited. You get to be happy, right? About Jesus. And I think that there's everything right about that. And so I want to end tonight with a time of worship. And I don't want this to be boring. I don't want this to be a thing where you sing. Because here's what happened today. We preached the mercies of God, right? And Paul urges you, look, offer your bodies as worship. Go after Jesus. Go after it. Go after it. Go after it. And so we're going to go after it together. And so if you'll stand back up, if you want to come forward, we're going to start going after it together. And here's what I want. I want you to actually go after Jesus. I want you to see his mercy. And when these guys start to play, when these guys start to rip, look, if you want to jump, jump. If you want to run, run. If you want to lift your hands, look, it's not a question. You're saying, Jesus, I love you. Does that make sense? We good with that? So let's worship and let's let the band lead us.